Earth Day 26 merch now available at horses.land. This video was made possible by Ground News.
It is hard and not impossible to make opium in the home kitchen. In the early 2000s, I knew a young, angry man named Trevor who was 19 and had shipped off to Afghanistan to kill terrorists. He was strong on the outside, and he was not strong on the inside. One day in the hot desert, as he told me, he and another soldier left base on a supply run. When they returned, an American fighting helicopter had crashed into their base, leaving the entire thing in a grand and violent spectacle, and many people burned to death that day. After this, and after the disillusionment that came from a man like Trevor in a place like that, fighting a war like that one, Trevor had turned to private enterprise. He shipped dried opium poppies to my house at a very good price. Making opium was a labor-intensive process, though I suppose my part of the process was the easiest of them all when I consider the sweat-covered farmhands who harvested and dried these poppies in the 120-degree heat of the Middle East. I grinded the poppies into a coarse powder, and for this I used a white Hamilton Beach blender which was mostly made of plastic, and I bought it at a second-hand store for $6. But the powder was still useless. Over the course of 6 hours, it needed to be simmered, steeped, strained, filtered 8 times, cooled to room temperature, pH adjusted, baked in an oven, and then dried in the sunlight. It was the hot summer in South Carolina, so at the end of it all, I placed the near opium on melamine plates and put the plates on the windowsill. It was indeed a great labor, this entire process, but I thought I could probably make some money by the time it was all said and done. I was an ambitious young man, but my grandest ambitions fell into rent and groceries, and they existed in that strange, limited place where poverty often forces them to be. To a more civilized person, the concept of why would have shattered the entire construct of the life I then lived. Why sell drugs? Why do crime? Why do bad things with bad people? After all, there were no forces in the world which made me do these things, and they were rather choices that I continuously selected of my own agency. The question of why, in this context, had too far of a horizon, and my choices could not see so far. I sold drugs to pay my bills. I did crimes to buy groceries. I did bad things with bad people for no particular reason other than those things being in front of me. There is a great expression which says the best tool is the one you will reach for. These were the tools which I and the world had collaborated to put in front of me, and so they were the ones that I reached for.
The Trump administration recently reclassified medical marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug. I think it's fair to say that this idea, the reclassification of marijuana, is long overdue, and at this point, you could say the American people should appreciate this very rare W. But looking at this story on Ground News, at a glance, we can understand the reclassification with a little more precision. For one thing, Ground News shows me that the story is being disproportionately covered by left-leaning outlets. At time of writing, there are 105 left-leaning sources reporting on this and just 43 right-leaning. But Ground News shows me more than just this uneven reporting. By combining information from all sides of the spectrum, I can genuinely learn more about the event itself. The order does legitimize medical marijuana programs, provide tax breaks, and research support. But bizarrely, recreational marijuana remains classified as a Schedule 1, alongside heroin, and deemed more dangerous than fentanyl, methamphetamine, and oxycodone. Voices on the left point out that this sends confusing messages and favors large cannabis business, while those on the right are less pointed in their criticism. I love that Ground News really allows me to understand all points of the events which shape our world by showing me the information that each side of the political spectrum omits from their reporting. Viewers of this channel may have noticed a pattern over the past 18-odd months. Ground News has been my only sponsor. That's because I'm not really interested in promoting predatory gambling companies or some landfill-destined plastic gadget. I genuinely believe in the work that the team at Ground News is doing, and I believe more people should be using the service. Unlike other platforms, Ground News doesn't push or suppress stories to influence your perception of the world. Their platform pulls in thousands of articles from around the world and organizes them by story to show you how the left, center, and right are choosing to frame current events. For every story, the color-coded layout makes it easy to see the political bias of each so-called unbiased outlet, any history of failing fact checks, and even which sources are independently owned or owned by large media conglomerates with corporate interests. When it comes to news, finding the truth is getting more difficult every day. I sincerely believe Ground News can help us right the ship on this whole issue. Ground News is fully independent and supported by readers like us, but I partnered with them to get my viewers 40% off the same Vantage plan I've been using. Go to ground.news/horses by clicking the link in my description, or scan my QR code to get a great deal on the Vantage plan with all of the features I just mentioned. By signing up, you're directly supporting the work I do here and your ability to think critically.
It was the late summer. It was the time of year during which the sun was burning so high in the afternoon, and it made an oppressive heat that seemed to remind us that we could fight it as much as we wanted and we would still lose. The crab apples on trees had begun to fall onto the ground, where they would be smashed under boots and eaten only by ants and insects. My friend Harris moved pounds of weed from the port through his house in the downtown area, and he sold LSD on breath mints and plastic vials of PCP. I wasn't really involved in his work, but I was involved in my own, and we existed in similar orbits. Word made its way from here to there, and eventually to me, that his home had been raided. A SWAT team had kicked down his door on one sweaty afternoon, held Harris and a few others at gunpoint, and hauled them all off in a big bus. With this in mind, in my proximity to Harris and my opium production, it was a great thing to see a police car parked outside of my apartment a few days later. The car was unoccupied, but its presence cast a stench of anxiety over me. It was an even greater thing when it remained parked there the second day, and then greater still on the third and the fourth. Each day a paranoia settled more intensely onto my shoulders, and it became quickly part of my morning routine to check outside for the police car. The car was never occupied, nor did it ever move, but it stared deeply at my apartment. It was on the fifth day that I felt very confident the car was an implicit and not entirely subtle threat from the local police department. It must be said that opium was just one entry in a list of illegal activity which came and went from my home. A man named Junior was a good friend at the time. He was a Haitian, about my age. He had long, locked hair, and he made a very good spaghetti. We'd met in high school and had become close after neither of us were able to successfully graduate. Junior was what you could call a loose cannon. He oscillated radically between moods of violent rage and genuine calm. I had seen Junior throw punches which could knock a man's head off of his neck, and I had seen him cook his spaghetti for a dozen people on hot and perfect summer evenings. I did not know much about Junior's life before we met in concrete, but there was a sense about him that things had gone continuously and without mercy quite poorly in one way or another. As a friend for several years, I saw it as my obligation to tolerate Junior's various moods. It was also true that I myself was a young, angry man of conflict. Junior was reliable enough, and to find someone reliable in this milieu of the world was, as I had learned, an entirely unrealistic sort of expectation. So late at night, I called Junior and asked him if I could move some stuff into his house for a while. "What you got?" he asked me. "Nothing crazy. Some work. I got some auntie I'm working on. Those pipes Aaron left over here. That little pistol my mama gave me." We had traded favors over the years, and so he obliged. Yeah, that's straight, but I ain't home. I'm in Magnolia. Can you come get me and we'll head over there, across the bridge?" This seemed like a fair enough trade. Everyone and myself knew about Magnolia Park. It was a large complex of government housing tucked away from anything else in many ways, and location was just one. There was a lot of drama in Magnolia Park, and this drama rarely left the area, which was plenty good enough for the more affluent members of the city. Magnolia was, perhaps above all else, not a place to go casually. When I arrived to the shared parking lot at Magnolia, it was a dark night that was lit by the bright overhead lights in the complex. There were many men standing in the grass areas and the sidewalks of Magnolia Park, and they seemed to be doing nothing at all. But as soon as I stepped out of my car, I could feel the broad recalibration of attention that comes with the presence of a stranger in places like Magnolia. The most obvious and shallow reason for this was that I was white, and there was no more emblematic piece of the city's lingering segregation than Magnolia Park. An equal and more true reason was my unfamiliarity. Magnolia Park was a bad place to be if you were not welcome. The men all began to walk my way with a slow sort of trepidation. I was not in danger, but I was certainly standing on the precipice of it. It was with the familiar and unappealing mix of hostility and suspicion that they began to approach me, and I knew this recipe often preceded violence if a man could not navigate it very well. Magnolia Park was a place where things could go very wrong very quickly. You can smell a gun in the air, just like you can smell gun smoke. I could smell the guns in the air, and I did not have one. I knew that it was incredibly rare for even a shooter to start shooting for no reason in particular. Still, worry gnawed at the most back part of my mind. Junior appeared from some corner of the complex. He held 2 styrofoam cups stacked in one another, the ice rattling as he walked towards me. Inside of the cups he had a mixture of codeine cough syrup, Sprite soda, and Jolly Rancher hard candies. He called out to the other men to calm down, not to worry about me. And indeed, Junior's presence changed the temperature of the air, and I could still smell the guns, but I did not worry about the shooters or the triggers or the idea of dying in Magnolia Park. We left, and I drove under the crab apple trees, and I could hear the fruits smash and pop beneath the tires of the car. We were headed for the long bridge which connected downtown to the more residential and coastal area where Junior and I both lived. I drove a 1994 BMW 318i, which I had purchased for $600, and it had 140,000 miles on it, and the sun had peeled the paint off the hood. The car had a faded sense of glory about it, but I found that I could only see the glory. I drove fast over the bridge for the same reason I did most things, and that was no reason at all. I drove 115 miles per hour, and the old car felt like it would collapse under the weight of the accelerator, and I did not care. "Thanks, man, the cop car, I don't know, it's got me tweaking," I told Junior. He handed me his styrofoam cups, and I took a long sip of the opiate. "Nah, yeah, for sure, that shit's spooky as hell, I get it. Just put the work at my place until it goes away, but you're probably good. If they really had any shit on you, they'd have raided you by now," Junior said. "Yeah, it's just everything with Harris. Probably someone snitched on his ass. You know, he was selling water in there. Some college kids started on that shit now. Ain't that some shit?" Junior said, but his words were slow and conversation was made difficult as he continued to sip from his stacked styrofoam cups. "I kind of wish I had gone to college," I said. You ain't got to go to college to do PCP. Junior laughed. I laughed too. No, not for that, I said. For, life and shit. I explained vaguely. Yeah, well, you ain't, Junior informed me with a chuckle. I ain't. Shit, I ain't either. All right then, I said. I looked out of the window into the very black night with its dots of city lights like frozen, sad fireflies, and I searched for the horizon, where the sea met the sky, but it was gone, and instead there was only blackness. It could have been peaceful, but the engine of the 1994 BMW whined and complained loudly as it tried its damnedest to keep up with the pressure I put upon it. The noise of the engine was pierced first by a loud, single blare from outside of the car. Then the black night became a strobe of red and blue, screaming sharply off my rear-view mirror. My mind began performing a series of clumsy, useless calculations. I felt myself to be in a different sort of danger than I was at Magnolia Park. Junior quickly began to drink from his styrofoam cups, and to stall for time, I kept driving to the end of the bridge and pulled over onto a grassy patch next to the road. Junior crammed the empty cups into the space between the seat and the door. The cop appeared outside of my window, and he leaned down. The policeman asked, "I got you at 112 and a 75. Why the hell you going so fast?" "I don't know. No one on the road," I told the cop. He asked me if I had been drinking. He asked if I was on drugs. He asked many things, and I lied very well, and I answered his questions. I didn't know that Junior had a warrant out for his arrest, but after a long visit back to his car, the cop sure did. He asked Junior to step out of the car, and Junior did just that. I looked in the rearview mirror, and the two had a long and silent conversation which was illuminated by only the dance of the red and blue lights against the darkness. Could not hear or really see very much, but the conversation went on, and what I did see next was a great thing that I will remember for a long time. I do not know why he did it, and I suspect Junior himself couldn't have said either. But when I looked into the rearview mirror, I saw Junior rush at the cop, and he slammed his elbow into the cop's jaw. But the codeine had made his usual effective physical capabilities slow and weak. The cop recovered quickly with his telescoping billy club and struck Junior in the ribs, sending him crumpling down onto the ground. The officer yanked Junior to his feet, shoved him chest first onto the back of my car, and fixed handcuffs around his wrists. It was then through some vague, ill-explained notion that the police officer arrested me as well, and by that time, there were 3 of those black and white police SUVs in total behind my car. I was corralled in handcuffs into a different car than Junior. I was shuffled into the police station later that night. The officers took a photo of me, and then they made me drop my pants and underwear as they shined a flashlight into my anus, presumably looking for drugs or weapons. They found none. The police officers took me to the drunk tank, that extra-large jail cell where vagrants of the night slept away their woes. It had 4 benches along the perimeter, on which sat various men in various states of inebriation, sorrow, patheticness, or some combination of them all. I took my seat on the bench next to a man who seemed even, whose head was slumped forward in the wind of an opiate high. The hours ticked forward, and I had nothing to do but wait and think and worry. I wondered if I would ever see Junior again. I thought about my opium and Harris and my mother and the summer sun and so many things. I did not think about my future because there was nothing to think of. It is a treacherous thing to not see a future for oneself, but this is surmountable. A person may have no prospects, yet still feel the hope that prospects can develop, that something can emerge from where there was once none. Less surmountable is when a man cannot see a future in which a future can even develop. This unique feeling is how I imagine it must be to drown. The drowning man with no imagination for how he could possibly float will reach for any object or detritus which floats by, no matter whether it will help him or only pull him down into the water. Each effort of this man will go unrewarded, no matter how strong those efforts may be. As they emerge as futile and actions become disconnected from their results, and as the man slowly sinks and water floods into his lungs, the idea of survival has long since become a stranger. Midnight became 3, and then 4, and I slowly fell into a sleep as I sat upright. I do not know for how long I slept, but I awoke with a dreary feeling, temporarily having forgotten my place. I stretched my arms wide over my head, and as my right hand came down, I felt it make contact with the head of the man next to me. By the man's estimation, this was plenty enough to be a fight. His opiate high had simmered away, or he was an entirely different man now, I could not say. He stood up quickly and he punched me in the lip. Blood came into my mouth, and this whole incident was so regular and uninteresting that it pulled no reaction from the other people in the cell. I punched the man back, but I was skinny and not strong, and my fist hit somewhere around his jaw with very little consequence. A police officer outside of the cell barked at us to calm down, unless we wanted to stay an extra day. Later that morning, I was released with a reckless driving ticket, so I took a bus back home, across the long bridge, and back to my apartment. When I arrived home, the sun was high and bright, still without retreat. I saw an interesting thing in front of my house. That same police car was there, but it was now in the process of being loaded onto the bed of a tow truck. A stocky, short tow man smoked a cigarette as he watched the car be pulled onto his truck. I tried to piece together what I was seeing before deciding the tow man could provide a better explanation. "Well, don't see that every day," I said to the tow man. "Yeah, this thing's been broken down here for a week now. I mean, hell, taking up y'all's parking spots and everything. You know the city, though. Everything's got to be cleared through all their people and committees and shit." The tow man shook his head in a casual and professional sort of disapproval. I thought this could have struck me as a very good thing and with some great kind relief, but it made me feel something else, something gross and sick and very lost. The apartment was quiet, and the opium was still drying on the windowsill. I picked up a small ball of the dried opium and rolled it between my fingers. It was sticky, almost black, but moldable like firm Play-Doh. I decided to smoke it, under the guise of testing the product I had made, but also with a less intentional truth. I put the opium into a pipe and pressed down on the sticky ball and held a lighter just above it. I inhaled the smoke once, twice, and then 3 times. It was warm in my mouth, and it had a familiar, manufactured flavor. I waited, and then I inhaled it again and again. I waited still to float away from many things and to sink beneath the surface of the life I had assembled. But the expectation of the opium never came to pass. It was junk. One way or another, the process had failed, and I was left with useless, inert tar. It was several weeks later that I learned Junior would be in jail for 15 years. It was still the late summer, and the sun still bled through the windows.